Again, welcome and thank you for joining us for Pear Deck for Remote Teaching, presented by the Technology Training Team. Today's session will be led by a few members of our team, as well as we'll be providing support to you in the Q&A panel. Today's facilitators and presenters of content are myself, Tia Simmons, Mr. Christopher Assing, who you will hear from later, and Ms. Gina Tuzo, who you will also hear from later. Additionally, we have two other of our team members who will be assisting to answer questions in the Q&A panel, and those individuals are Ms. Kimberly Nyarko and Ms. Michelle Conti. So let's get started with Pear Deck. That's why we're here, and we're going to dive right on in. In this particular session, you are going to learn how to use Pear Deck as an application first, and then how to go on to create engaging lessons for your students. In order to get started, we're going to cover a few items with you today. First, let's talk a little bit about what is Pear Deck, why would you use it? Secondly, we're going to give you a chance to try it out. We're going to allow you to see the student perspective of Pear Deck to see what your students would experience as you use the tool with them. And then finally, we'll walk through some of the features and presentation tools of Pear Deck so that you can learn yourselves how to create presentations with this engagement tool. Pear Deck is an add-on, which means it's a application that you can use on top of some of your very popular tools that you may use for instruction, like Google Slides or even PowerPoint. We will show you a little bit later in the session how to add the add-on so that you have full functionality of Pear Deck. However, you do need to know that you can either install the add-on from the Chrome Web Store or from the Microsoft Store. And then after we finish going over some of the features for today, we're going to talk you through just about how you can access Pear Deck on the web using your internet browser to look at some additional information. Now, a lot of people ask us, should I use Pear Deck for my instruction? I already use Google Slides as my presentation tool, or I already use PowerPoint as my presentation tool. Tia, why would I use Pear Deck? Well, Pear Deck adds an extra layer of engagement with your students that not only allows you as a teacher to relay content, but your students to be engaged with the content. And the great thing about Pear Deck is that not only are there templates, but there are full lessons already created for you. So you don't have to start from scratch. Additionally, as we moved into remote learning full-time, a number of our specific departments within our curriculum and instruction office began creating templates and lessons and lesson seeds and examples for our teachers to use based off of some of the features in Pear Deck. So you already have access to it. It's already embedded in some of your curriculum. Why not try it out for yourself? One of the key features of Pear Deck is that it allows you to engage your students in both synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities. In the asynchronous learning opportunities, your students can work at their own pace, and you're going to get a chance and an opportunity to do that in just a moment. For synchronous opportunities of learning, this is where you as the teacher would provide access to a Pear Deck presentation that you do at the same time, at the same place with your students in a live session. And we're going to talk you through a little bit of that once we get finished the first half of our training. So now let's get ready to dive in, and we're going to give you the opportunity to experience Pear Deck from a student perspective. So now this will take a little bit of navigating, but as long as you listen to these instructions and follow them specifically, you'll be good to go. In a moment, there will be a link placed in the chat that will allow you to connect to the Pear Deck presentation that we've already created for you. You can simply click on that link that's in the chat window, or if you're looking at the WebEx browser, you can open additional browser if you are able to have two windows side by side, so that you can go navigate to joinpd.com and enter the code you see on the screen. For ease, it's probably best to click on the link that's already in the chat window, and then you'll be able to log in and join the Pear Deck presentation. Whatever you do, don't close the WebEx screen, because you'll still need to be able to hear our voice and hear our instructions as we guide you through. The presentation that you're joining now is going to be a self-paced or student-paced presentation that will take you through some of the different slide types that are available to you in Pear Deck. There's no need to spend too much time on any one slide, and don't worry about trying to finish it all, because it won't be graded. So again, if you are in WebEx with us now, you are welcome to stay here, but we invite you to join to get the student experience so that you know what a student would see when you use Pear Deck with your own students. To get into the student Pear Deck experience, you will need to click on the link in the chat window. If you do not see your chat window, you should see in the bottom left corner of the WebEx screen an icon that looks like a speech bubble that says chat. Once you find that icon, once you click on it, you will toggle or turn on the chat window and see the link that Chris just placed in the chat for you to access. We're inviting everyone here to participate in the student experience so that you will see the other side of Pear Deck. Once you get to a screen that asks you to stop, you're welcome to come back and join us into the WebEx experience. So we'll give you a few moments at this time to participate in the WebEx experience, the Pear Deck experience, excuse me. And if you have any questions, please use the Q&A panel to ask those questions. So once again, just in case you're just joining us, right now, all participants in this session are taking the opportunity to experience the student side and the asynchronous learning side of Pear Deck. In order to get to that particular Pear Deck presentation, we're going to ask you to click on the link in the chat window. And we're going to give everyone about another 4 minutes or so just to work through some of the examples of the different slide types that a student may use in the midst of a Pear Deck lesson. Okay, for those of you still working, we're going to give you about 2 more minutes, and then you will notice that you no longer have control of the presentation, and we're going to ask you to come on back to the WebEx screen. For those of you that are finishing in the student experience, just a quick reminder, in order to move through the various slides, there are 2 arrows that will appear in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. By clicking on those arrows, you'll be able to toggle through each individual slide type. Okay, so I know a few of you are finishing up in the student experience. It's best if you click on those particular arrows to help you toggle through each particular slide type. And hopefully, as you're working your way through, you've had a chance to see the different types of interactivity or engagement your students can have, and you've started thinking about content that you have coming up in the next 2 weeks that one of these slide types might fit perfectly for. It's about 1 more minute for those of you that are participating in the student experience live, and then we'll ask you to return to the WebEx browser for the remaining portion of our session. All right, take the next 10 seconds, please, to finish the slide that you're on in the student experience. And then we'll need you to navigate back into the WebEx environment. So if you were on the student experience, you may not have noticed, but you actually left WebEx and went to your internet browser. So now we need you to come on back so we can show you how to create these awesome and engaging Pear Deck lessons with your students. Okay, so take the next 5 seconds, please, to finish the slide that you're on and come on back into the WebEx environment. That way you can join us as we finish with the remaining portion of our session. All right, so I hope everyone's back with us in the WebEx interface here in the WebEx screen. You will know that you're back with us and in the right spot because you'll be able to see the Q&A panel on your You'll see the WebEx participant panel along the bottom of your screen, and then you will also see the screen in the middle, which will be a little smaller that we are changing momentarily. So hopefully you had the opportunity to walk through just a few of the slides that are available for use in Pear Deck that will allow you to be able to engage your students, not only with content, engaging content, but also the opportunity to respond live while you're in that session with your students. So let's talk a little bit about some of the presentation controls that you may have seen on your side, or for those of you that stayed here in the WebEx interface that you've seen on our side. Now, as a teacher and the one that will be presenting the Pear Deck content and slides to your students, one of your go-tos and your best friends is going to be the presentation controls inside of Pear Deck. Now, you didn't see all of these on the student experience because the student experience is really just for the students to be able to navigate back and forth and be able to add their responses. But as the teacher, you're going to have access to all these controls. So let's talk through just a few of them. Now, what we're not suggesting, just make sure you hear me clearly, is that you try it right now. We just want you to take a look at the controls that you will have access to and the ones that you'll see on the screen throughout the remaining portion of our training time together today. So first, your navigation, not only just for you, but for your students, you may have noticed is on the far left-hand side of the bottom of the Pear Deck screen, okay? So you can either navigate one slide forward or one slide backwards, or you'll have the option to navigate through the slides, kind of like looking through a slide sorter. So if I know I'm supposed to be on slide 10, I can go ahead and jump down to slide 10 by choosing the slide navigation icon. Moving over to the right, as the teacher, if you have notes for your slides, or even if you're using a Pear Deck template from another curriculum and instruction office and there are notes in those particular slides, then you can toggle on to be able to see the presenter notes for the slides that you're working through and the content that you're working through. I think my screen just went a little bananas, so give me a second to just pull it back. Sorry about that. To the right of the icon that we saw for the presenter notes, which we'll get that slide back up in a second. Just give me a minute to navigate there. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. To the right of the presenter notes icon, this is where you'll be able to see the number of students who have joined your particular presentation live, or if you're using the asynchronous model of Pear Deck and allowing your students to go in at their own pace, you'll be able to see the number of students that have joined that particular presentation. And to the left, the first number that you see there will tell you the number of responses that you have. So as you're waiting for your students to get their answers in and to respond, you'll be able to keep a live count of how your students are progressing through. To the right of that, you'll see there's like a little circle there and it says presenting. This tells you which mode of Pear Deck that you're in, whether you're doing student paced or whether you're doing instructor led. If it's instructor led, you are the one presenting as the teacher, so you will see the word presenting. If you happen to take a look while you were in the student paced version of the Pear Deck presentation and you looked at the bottom of your screen, you may have noticed that it said student paced. Okay, so this will let you know which particular mode you're using for your Pear Deck session. As the teacher, to the right of that, there are some additional controls that you can use. One is to show responses. If I am allowing my students in a live session, so it's real time, I'm giving them the option to answer, and I want to be able to see their answers, as well as perhaps point out some exemplar answers, then I can use the show response icon there to toggle between what I'm presenting in the actual presentation itself, what's on the screen and what's on the slide, versus what the students' answers are that have been submitted. To the right of that, there's an icon to lock your screen. Maybe you've given the students enough time or ample time and you want to be able to pause them where they are and refocus or center them. Or if you even want to give them a certain amount of time in which to answer, your lock screens icon will help you with that. And in our Pear Deck Part 2 session, we go a little bit more in depth into that. So please make sure you register and join us. And then one of the newer additions to Pear Deck, which I absolutely love, is the new question icon you see there. Previously in Pear Deck, you had to create your presentation. Once you built it, that's where it stood, and you didn't necessarily have the opportunity to add another question type slide on the fly. Now you do. So as you're going through, you're informally assessing your students and their learning. Maybe you've covered a large chunk of content and you realize, oh man, I really need to go back and pause right here and check for understanding, and I didn't put that slide in ahead of time. Then you can definitely utilize that new question icon to drop a question in. Okay, so let me just go over those last three again, especially for those of you that may just be joining in. The first one is the show responses icon, and that will allow me to see what my students have entered. And actually, let me go ahead and turn that on real quick just to see and show you how we as the instructors are able to see what was entered as the student. So I'm going to go ahead to the bottom of my screen and click on the show responses icon so that you can see how we can see in real time what you have entered. So once I click on show responses, this is just an example based on that last slide that we were looking at where it asked you to give a response by using the drawing slide. As you can see there, various students chose various methods, and some, just judging by them being empty, some of them being empty may not have gotten that far. But as a teacher, I can scroll through and I can see what each student entered, okay? So that's the show responses. I can even select a particular student's screen to show perhaps everyone like this is either good thinking or how can we help the student expand their thinking, okay? And it's all real time. So if the student continued to add to it, we would see that in real time. All right, so I'm just scrolling through right now, taking a look at some of the responses. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. To the right of that, we talked about the lock screen. That just allows me to set a timer or set a lock on the presentation. And then finally, I can ask a new question on the fly if I wanted to. The last two settings there will allow you to open up what we call the teacher dashboard, which we'll talk about a little bit later once we get in and begin building and showing you how to actually build some of these options. And then the last one is to end the session that you're currently in. So once you go live, whether it's with your students at student pace or a live session where your students are in front of you doing it as you're teaching, you can choose to end the session, which will close it off and not allow students or not permit them to enter any additional information. Okay. So hopefully that will cover just a bit of the presentation controls. Any questions? And we'll take a moment to address some. I do see one question. How do you show responses but hide the names? So when it depends on your particular slide type that you're in, like for example, the ones that we showed, you could see as we were scrolling up. I do believe, and I'm going to lean on one of my colleagues for a moment. Chris, I do believe there's an option to toggle off the names, but is that at sign in or is that as you're going through and looking at the responses?
That actually to you is so when you have the projector view, it's called a projector view, but that is the view that would actually display to students. The names are taken off of that view by default. If you want to see names or be able to provide feedback, you can view the teacher dashboard view, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the session.
Awesome. Great question, Femi. I hope I pronounced your name right. Miriam is asking, do we need multiple screens? So it's really up to you. It's based on your comfort level in terms of presenting. Some teachers will simply have up both screens within both windows. Let me correct myself. Within their one screen on their laptop that they're using. So in this case, we didn't show you that just because it can get a little confusing, but you can actually minimize the window for the teacher dashboard, the side that you're projecting, and then you can also open up an incognito window so that you could show where the students should be to help guide your students who are more visual. Or in fact, if you have two different screens, you could use an extended desktop version of two different screens if you needed to, if you're comfortable with that. There's a question about saving the work. Once your students are logged in using their PG County Gmail account, there is a way to be able to save what they've done so that as a teacher, you can go back and be able to provide feedback, maybe provide follow-up, maybe have a smaller group for Wednesday for instruction if you're doing this in between the week. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in our session today. Great question. Any other questions? So far, we've just talked about the student experience, and I promise we're going to dive in a moment and walk through on the teacher side what you would see to set this all up. But any other questions that may have popped up into your head as you went through the student experience? Are the pictures add-on? I think if I understand correct, Whitney, you're asking about the pictures that you see on the screens. There are some pictures that will come if you choose some of the pre-made templates in Pear Deck, but you always have the opportunity to add your own images as well because you're still using Google Slides or PowerPoint as you normally are. So you do have the option to add your own pictures. Great. And then when you leave a session, how can students log in again? And thank you, Gina, for dropping that answer in. If you're in student pace mode, the students can log in and out as much as they need to until you actually end that session. So ending the session is when you actually turn off their ability to go back into that particular presentation and add their feedback or to use some of the engagement options. Yep, great questions. Great. So it looks like you all are ready to dive in and learn a little bit more. So we're going to switch gears now. We can take the student experience, just kind of hold that in the back of your mind because you now know what it looks like for your students. And let's actually walk through what it's like for a teacher to begin creating these interactive and engaging lessons with your students. So we're going to tag team out here as we often do in T3, and my colleague Chris is going to walk you through how to begin creating some of these interactive presentations using Pear Deck.
Thank you, Tia. And just one quick question popped in as you were ending, so I'll be glad to answer that audibly. The system, Pear Deck application itself, and the question is, if I add the Google slide, why do my students not see the new information? What happens is when you create your presentations and you begin the presentation in Pear Deck, the Pear Deck application, kind of to make a metaphor here, grabs onto that presentation, it takes it, changes it over into Pear Deck format, and that's it. So if you do make changes, you actually do have to stop your Pear Deck presentation and then reload a new presentation in order for those changes to happen, unless you're adding a new question in between. So you want to make sure that you take the time to finalize your presentation prior to starting your Pear Deck session so that all of your changes can be absorbed. All right, so as Tia mentioned, we are going to move forward and talk about how to create an interactive presentation with Pear Deck. All right, so in terms of creating a Pear Deck lesson, there's a couple different pieces, but first you're going to want to get the add-on. Now, an add-on is an application that basically extends the functionality of a certain Google Suite application. Okay, so I did include directions in the email that was sent to you about this session as to how to download and install the add-on. So you can always refer back to that if you didn't have a chance to do it. But I am also going to demonstrate how to install the add-on for you. Okay, so I'm here in Google Slides. This is a blank Google slide. I just opened up Slides like you would at any point in time. Now, I already have the Pear Deck add-on. I'm going to show you the clicks that are necessary to install the add-on, but it won't do a full install because I already have it on my computer. So once I'm in Google Slides, I'm going to open up a blank presentation and I'm going to come to add-ons here on the toolbar. Okay. So I'm going to click add-ons there, and then I'm going to come down to get add-ons. Now again, Pear Deck already appears here because I have already installed the add-on, but for you, it won't appear in this list. So you're going to come down to get add-ons. Sometimes, depending on your network connection or how many people are using the system, it can take a second to load. But now that you see that Google Workspace Marketplace has popped up. Now, commonly, you are able to find the Pear Deck add-on here right on your landing page once you click it. But if for some reason you do not see Pear Deck, you can come to the search at the top and type Pear Deck, enter, and then you'll see the add-on appear there. Now, again, please keep in mind, this is a demo, so we suggest that you not do this while we're doing it so that you can see what you'll need to do. But again, as I mentioned, you did receive an email with directions for installing the add-on if you were registered for the session prior to 12 o'clock today. All right. So once I've located Pear Deck, I'm going to click. And the button would say install. Now mine says uninstall, of course, because I already have it installed, but I'm going to click install. I would get a little pop-up window there that asks me for some permission. I'm going to say yes, you can have the permission, and the Pear Deck add-on will install. You must install the Pear Deck add-on in order to be able to use Pear Deck with Google Slides, or if you're a PowerPoint person, you would use the add-in, it's called in Microsoft, but you would use an add-in in that case. And Pear Deck does have several help resources for you. All right, now a Pear Deck menu option will appear here at the top. This Pear Deck menu may not appear right away. Sometimes after it's installed, it does take some time to come up. However, you will be able to access it from the add-ons menu. Okay, so when I click add-ons, I'm going to scroll down to Pear Deck. And then it's going to pop up another little menu here to the right that says open the Pear Deck add-on. So I'm going to open that. Let me just move something out of my screen. You're going to see a little working there at the bottom. And then you're going to notice that there is a menu that will appear here to the right. Okay. I'd like you to keep in mind, Pear Deck actually is a paid application. However, Prince George's County Public Schools has paid for all teachers in all Prince George's County Public School staff to have access to the premium version of Pear Deck. So it's very important that when you log into Google Slides, that you are logged in with your PGCPS credentials. If you log in using a personal email address, you are not going to be able to have the premium features, and you will not be able to do the majority of what we're doing today. So please make sure that you're always logged in with your PGCPS email. Okay, so as you heard me mention, Pear Deck is an add-on to Google Slides. What is an add-on? It extends the functionality of the application. And basically, you're going to use Google Slides in the same manner that you would any other slide presentation. A common question that we get here is, do I have to create a brand new presentation, or can I use ones that I already have? The answer to that question is yes. You can use slides that you already have, or you can create a brand new presentation. It's totally up to you. So for our purposes today, I'm going to use a blank presentation, not one that I already have, but I could add some interactivity on a presentation that I'd already created in the past if I wanted to. All right, so we're going to pretend this is my first slide here, and I'm going to start by showing you the template library. Okay, the template library is a great tool that Pear Deck has, and again, it never fails. My phone always rings when I'm doing a webinar. Please forgive me for that noise in the background. All right, but I'm going to click on the template library here, and there's a series of template slides that I can use, okay? So one of the things that you'll see here, I have beginning of lesson templates, which will include things that are more bell ringer, do now, or warm up, depending on what term you like to use, focus. I have during lesson options, and I have end of lesson options. So the during lessons are great, and the end of lessons are great for quick formative assessments. I could go through any of those. I also have critical thinking slide templates and socio-emotional learning templates. All right. I also have subject area templates. So maybe I'm a math teacher. I'm the farthest thing from that, but maybe I'm a math teacher and I would like to have a math focused template. I could click on that particular template library. Okay. But for our purposes today, I'm going to use a beginning of lesson template. So I'm going to click here on beginning of lesson. And maybe I want to do a really quick formative assessment of what my students learned during the process of completing their homework last night. So for example, I'm going to use this what did you learn from the homework slide. I click on it. The system is going to tell me that it's working. It's going to take a few seconds to process. Just let it do its thing. And all of a sudden you notice I have a what did you learn from the homework slide in my presentation. Now you're going, Chris, what if I don't want to know what they learned on their homework? I want to know what they learned last week during the YouTube scene that we watched to show how to solve a long division problem. I'm not locked in to using this particular text. I might say, what did you learn? And all I'm doing is editing a Google slide in the same way I would if it was any other slide type. So now I'm here saying, what did you learn from the homework? All right, maybe I don't want the homework. I want to say, what did you learn from the long division video we viewed last week? Okay. And again, all I did was edit a Google slide as I normally would. All right, I didn't do anything outside, nothing different. I clicked in the text box and I edited it. One of the things, maybe you don't like the font, just like you would edit a normal font. I could do the same thing. I can change the layout, the colors, all of that. All right, so maybe I wanted a different layout. Let's say here, I don't like sky blue. I'm a royal blue fan. I want to change it to royal blue. All I did was do that in the Google Slide Suite, just like I normally would. Okay, so any of these templates can be edited to meet your needs. And you have a series of templates that you can walk through on your own. Okay, but again, you must install the add-on first, and you want to make sure that you are logged in with your PGCPS credentials. Okay, all right, next thing, I've used the template, but Chris, I've gone through all of these templates here, and you know what? Just none of them are working for me. I need to be able to create my own slide, and I still want it to be interactive. How can I do that? Great question. All right. So what I'm going to do is come up to my little plus sign here, and I'm going to create a new slide. Again, I'm just using Google Slides as I normally would. I don't particularly want these text boxes, so I'm going to get rid of them. All right, and all I'm doing is, again, can't say it enough, I'm just playing with a Google slide like I would any other time. But maybe this time, what I want my students to do is answer a multiple choice question, for example. So I can look over here at the template library if I want, or I can place in a custom slide type, okay? So I want that multiple choice question. So I'm just going to create a little text box here, again, like I normally would, so I can place my question in. All right. And I'm just going to increase the size of my font. Again, like I said, I'm not doing anything special. I'm just editing a normal Google slide. So maybe I want to divided by 2, for example. All right, I'm going to say, what did you get when you divide 2 divided by 2? Okay, and math teachers, please don't laugh at me. I'm just picking a simple example because I'm not a math whiz. All right, But again, I can change my font as I would like to. Maybe I want a different font or I wanted to place a picture. So now I want my students to answer a choice slide. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to click on the choice option. All right. And what this is going to do is give me a multiple choice option. So I can put in 1, 2, 3. Maybe I want another option here because I want a D. I'm going to put in my answer choices. When I click update slide, it's going to let me know that it's adding an interactive question. All right. And so when I go to present this in Pear Deck, I'm going to get those choices that I just entered on the right side. It'll be just like the multiple choice question that you saw earlier when you were walking through our presentation on your own. All right. One thing I'd like to point out is that down here at the bottom, and you'll see it on the template slide I used as well, but down here at the bottom, Pear Deck adds this little toolbar, okay, to the slides. You want to ensure that you do not delete or remove this toolbar, okay, or move it around. You want to leave it there. That toolbar is what allows the slide to be interactive. So you want to make sure that you do not delete or remove this bar at all. It's not going to prevent you from customizing your slide as you'd like to. You're certainly welcome to do so, but you do need this in order for that slide to be interactive. All right, I'm going to add another slide here. Okay, so just so you can see some of the different types of options that you have, that was the multiple choice. So let's talk about, let's say, a text slide. All right, I want my students to respond to a question, all right, in text format. So notice that I click text, I got that little bar here. Same way that I did before, I'm going to add my background, or if I had a particular slide template that I was using, I could do that. I'm going to add another toolbar here, another text box here to ask my question. So maybe I want to say this time, and I'm just going to increase my font, change my font color, and it didn't save for me. All right, change my font color. It's not saving like I wanted to. All right, give me 1 second. I want this to be 50. Oop. All right, let's try it this way since my computer is not happy with me today. All right, all I'm going to do here, again, I've increased my text. I'm just manipulating a Google slide like I usually would. So in this instance, maybe I'm going to say, explain how you got to your answer on the last slide. Okay, so maybe I want the student to explain how they arrived at their answer. So what I'm going to do now, I have this text slide in. Again, like I said, I can come in here. I can change the font if I want. I can basically edit the slide and make it look any way I want. All right, and I have this. So now that I have this bar and I've chosen the text option, students will be able to enter a text response just like they did before, okay, or just like you saw when you were walking through our sample. Just to go through what a couple of these other options are for time purposes, I'm not going to individually go to each one, but you do have the number option here. The number slide is one similar to the jelly bean slide that you saw earlier, and it will ask you to enter a number answer. As a teacher, you would see a number line that reflects the students' responses. I can also do the website slide, and I'm actually going to show you the website slide just because sometimes it can have a tiny hiccup. So I'm going to pick a blank slide here, and I'm repeating it again. I'm just picking that background that I want, all right, on my background. And I'm going to...
Hey, Chris, I'm sorry to interject, but I see this question in chat, and as you're building, I think it's a good moment to kind of talk about it for a minute. But there's a
Sure.
question, there's a couple of questions that have reoccurred asking about where are these options when you're building your slides. So I think it's just important to note right now that as you're building on the teacher side, you're not going to see what the students see. So for example, if you give multiple choice options, depending if you use a template, you have a frame that you can add your own content. But if you're building like Chris is building from scratch, then you're not going to see the student options from the builder perspective. You won't see that until the students actually go in and they will see it on their side. So I just think there's some confusion there, Chris, about if I add a draggable, how come on my side as a teacher I don't see the draggable options, right? Like how come I don't see the pins and stuff like that? So I just want to point out as Chris is building it, you won't see the presentation the way the students will see it as you build. Only the students will be able to see the multiple choice options or the pins for the draggable. And as we get towards the end, Chris can actually show you how you can preview it so that you can see what it looks like for the students.
Yep. And I'll be glad to do that. Thank you, Tia. That was a good thing to bring up. I will also note that down here in the speaker notes, you'll notice that there is a guide that says this is a Pear Deck multiple choice slide, and it will show what your current options are. So like I mentioned, I selected 1, 2, 3, 4 already. Maybe I made a mistake and I want to edit that. So this is a good thing. And thank you, Gina, for cueing me to talk about this. Maybe I want to edit that change. I realize, oops, I made a mistake. I can come back to that slide, go back to the type, and this was the choice slide. So I'm going to click on choice again. All right. And notice that it brings my options back up again. So maybe I didn't want this to be 4. I wanted this to be 7. All right. And then I'm going to click update. And you'll see now here down at the bottom in the speaker notes that that option has changed. So if you don't remember what you entered or what you wanted it to be, you can look at the speaker notes at the bottom. You just won't see the student view until you preview the presentation yourself. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay. All right. So again, I talked about the different types of slides. I was showing you the website slide. So if I want to bring up a website here, again, I always like to place directions on my slide, and I'm just doing simple examples for right now. Let's see if I can get this to work this time. There we go. I'm doing simple examples for right now. All right. And maybe I want to say, please read this article from CNN. Okay. And that's just a simple direction that I'm providing to my students. So I want this to be a website slide. I'm going to come over. All right. And you see the website, the option pops up for me to enter a web address. So I could easily come here to cnn.com. Again, this is just an example. I'm going to, if my computer will work with me, locate an article that I'd like the students to read. Just looking for something here that may be appropriate and is not about the riot. And unfortunately, there is nothing. Let's jump over here to entertainment. All right. But I could find any article on this website. All right. And I could come here. Maybe I want to open this Ken Jennings article and talk about Jeopardy. Just as an example, I'm just going to copy the web address from here, come back on over to my slide presentation, and I'm going to paste it there. All right. And I'm glad that it did this. This is what I wanted to show you. For certain sites, for some reason, and we don't know why, and Pear Deck's not always able to explain it, but sometimes you will not see a preview here, okay? If you don't see a preview here, it usually indicates that during your presentation, the students will receive an error, okay? So you can always provide a link to that website for them to go out to the article and come on back to the presentation. But this preview window is a good window to tell you whether or not that particular website works directly with your particular Pear Deck presentation. Now I'm going to replace this, and hopefully this one will come up. I'm going to enter Google there. Oh, it doesn't want to work with Google either. Okay, let's try Yahoo. I promise we do this all the time. So it's just taking me a minute to find a site. But typically a site would come up here. Maybe if I try a PGCPS site, let's see. Oh, that one doesn't want to work for me either. Okay, so there may be just an error going on right now, but you can try various sites. And if the preview jumps up, then it's a good site. It will work. It seems, and normally there's not this many issues with it, but you can get this error. So just in case you're wondering, oh, it didn't pop up in the preview, I want the students to still read that article from CNN. I can create a link directly on the site. All I'm going to do is highlight. Actually, let me highlight this article here. I can come up to my link icon to insert a link, or I can click insert, link. I can paste that link in there and click apply. And then the students could click on this and then go out and read that particular article. So that's a good backup example if you notice that one of the websites is not working and does not appear in your preview. And again, I know you're going, Chris, that's real hard to read. All I'm going to do is highlight it. All right, and I can change the color to make it fit. So that's the website slide. You have the drawing slide. The drawing option gives the students a chance to draw on the slide. It will give them tools like a pencil, a marker, and various colors, and they can draw. Again, you saw an example of that back in the presentation. There's also the draggable slides, and that's the one where if you got a chance to see it in the sample, you maybe were dragging a flag over to Algeria or something like that. I'll take a second, since it looks like we're doing pretty well on time here, to show you that. So maybe I want to, and again, I'm just going to add my usual background or whatever layout I want. In there, if I picked a theme, it would go in, but maybe I want a map. All right, so I'm going to come in here and click insert, select image, and search the whip. All right, and I'm doing this in Google Slides, you know, nothing extra. And maybe I want a map of Asia. All right, I'm going to search for that. I'm looking for a blank one. Oh, here's one I like. I'm going to click it. I am going to then insert that onto my slide there. All right, notice that my map has come up. I'm going to push it all the way here to the right. For my purposes, and again, you can design this in any manner you want. I can bring in a text box here, and I could say, please drag your flag to India. All right, if it would help if I could spell India right now. All right, so maybe I put those directions there on the slide, and I might want to increase my font a little bit here. Okay. So I'm going to come over to my draggable option. I'm going to click drag. You'll notice that it says it's working. All right. And I have different types of draggable items. In this case, it's a dot, but like I said, my direction set a flag. So I'm going to select my flag. I bring that menu up again. There are various math symbols, numbers, person icons, and punctuation marks. All right, but I'm going to use a flag because since that's what I put in there and we're dragging it on a map, I'm going to click on that. And now I have my flag. Maybe I don't like red. It just doesn't work. I want green. I can click on that green color palette and I can select the color that I like. All right. Maybe you've created a draggable slide that you want students to drag multiple flags. I can click add another. All right, and I can do another flag. Maybe I told them to add this flag to Japan. All right, so I've chosen another flag. I don't want the blue to clash. Give me some orange there, and I can change that color. I can also change the size of those flags. So if I drag my little slider here over all the way to the right, it'll get larger. Larger icons are great for students who may have visual impairments. All right, or maybe I just want it to be a regular size. Maybe I want it to be small because I put a bunch of icons on there for them to drag and I want it to fit the image. You can drag that until you're happy. I'm just going to go all the way to the side. I can continue adding another until I get up to 5 icons. All right. Once I have hit 5, I can no longer add them. So if you needed them to drag 10 icons, you'd need to create a second slide. Pear Deck is aware that teachers would like to be able to add more things. They do tell us that they're working on it, but it's not a feature yet to have any more than 5 icons on one given slide. Once I'm done, I'm going to click Update Slide. And now you'll notice that my flags appear in the bottom. Remember, I do not want to remove this bar. And now my students could drag their flags anywhere once I begin their presentation. Okay, so those are how you would create a custom interactive slide. Or again, you can use the template library and edit it or use as is. One last quick feature I do want to show you right here is add audio to a slide. All right, you may have a student that has some hearing impairments. All right, or you want to just have your students hear your voice because, especially in this pandemic time, they want to connect to you and you might want to hear the voice or provide some reinforcements from your audio learners. I can click Add Audio to Slide. I'm going to get a little tool that comes up here, and I have two options. I can record audio or I can upload audio. Maybe you're a music teacher, all right, and you have an MP4 file. You want your students to listen to a piece of music and respond to it. I can upload an audio file, okay, or an MP3 or whatever kind of file format you may have, all right. But in this case, I just want to record some audio because I want to be able to allow my students to audibly hear my directions. So I'm going to click the record button. It's going to ask me if it's okay for me to use my microphone. I'm going to say yes. Students, on this slide, please drag your flag to the country of India. If you need help, please ask. All right, I just made up some quick directions. It is helpful for you to write a script ahead of time. Now, I do have the option here to stop or pause my recording as I've done. All right, if I'm like, oh, I messed up, I can delete it. Maybe I want to resume it. I think, oh, I forgot some directions. Maybe I want to add some more to what I recorded. So I can click resume and say, I'd like the red flag specifically to go to the country of India. Pause. All right, and then I can stop again. If I'm happy with it, I'm going to click save. Then I have an option to listen to the entire set of directions. I just click the little playhead here. Students, on this slide, and please hear, I can listen to those directions all the way out. If I don't like it, I can delete it. I can download this because maybe I know I want to use those directions for another slide presentation later. So I can save a copy of that to my computer, all right, if I wanted to do so. I can change the volume and so forth. Maybe I don't want it to be so loud when it's playing, so I can slide it down and so forth, okay? If I'm happy with it, we'll say I'm happy with it. I'm going to click the Add Audio to Slide button. Right? It's going to take a second to process. If you do a really long audio file, I'm not sure what the limit is. That's a good question for us to ask Pear Deck. But if you do something that's really long, which by the way, we recommend you don't because you'll lose your students' attention, all right, it can take some time to process and add to the slide. But once it's done, you're going to see this audio included bar that appears here to the right. Just like our activity here at the bottom, you do not want to move or remove this bar to ensure that your audio file stays attached to that given slide. When the students see the presentation, they will have a pair of headphones that will appear on their screen, and they'll see that to the bottom right, okay? So they can click on that to listen to the audio. The students do have to individually click on that audio in order to hear it. And in order to listen to it, you can't play it for them all at the same time on the slide unless you wanted to do that in a live session from a different audio player. But it is designed for the student to be able to listen to individually and repeatedly if they need it. And again, you see my audio included flag that I am not going to remove. Okay. So now that we've been through the interactive slide types, I'm going to pause here really quickly to see if there's any questions I need to answer before we talk about how to begin a Pear Deck paced presentation. All right, and team, if there's any questions, I'm trying to pull up the Q&A, but please let me know if there's anything that's come up repeated that I need to answer live.
I think we've covered most of them, Chris. Just a few to note as you were going through. One in particular is the question is there any way I can incorporate my slide with an already made Pear Deck lesson?
Yes, absolutely, you sure can. So if I had a Pear Deck lesson already set, so let's pretend that this lesson I see on the screen is already a Pear Deck lesson that I've used, but I want to add my own slide. I'm going to come up here and click File, and I'm going to click the Import Slides option. All right, Google will take a second to process, and it's going to give me other slide presentations that I already have. I am going to just click on this Pear Deck one that's here at the top. I'm going to click Select. Again, it will take a second to process depending on your computer and how many slides are in that given presentation. Just let it do its thing. All right, maybe I want to bring in my title slide here. I'm going to click on it and I'll click Import Slides. All right, so when I do that, you notice here at the bottom, my title slide has imported into the current presentation, and I can move it to the top. Now I have a title slide there. All right, and you can move over any slide you want and include audio or interactivity as you'd like to. All right.
Awesome. I did take a look at Pear Deck's website regarding the question about how long you can record your audio. There isn't a specific time limit indicated on their website. However, I do just want to remind everyone that instructionally, we should not be providing more than 2, maybe at the maximum 3 minutes of audio for the students, just because attention wise, who's going to listen to 7 minutes all of 7 minutes of instructions? Additionally, you can upload an audio file. So if you choose to create that audio somewhere else, or maybe you have a very famous person that gets to read the directions and you want to use that, you can upload up to 20 megabytes of an audio file on the slide.
All right. Thank you, Tia.
Absolutely.
I do see an interesting question here from, I believe it's Levette. Please excuse me if I pronounced that incorrectly, but about can you use one audio for all of the slides? Great question. The audio is linked to the individual slide you added it to. So technically, if you wanted to keep uploading the same file over and over, you could, but instructionally, as Tia mentioned, that's not a great idea because you will lose the attention of your learners. All right. Let's see. Any other questions, team, that we needed to answer out loud before we move on?
None, but I just want to clarify that again, there's no set time limit, but if you're uploading audio, there's a size limit. But more importantly, the focus is just making sure that we're providing small enough chunks for our learners to understand and receive.
Excellent point. That's why I like having my team with me.
And Chris, I would just like to stress also something that came up. We did mention earlier, Tia mentioned that many of the curriculums now have things that say, hey, use this Pear Deck lesson. Or if you already have a lesson, a PowerPoint or a Google slide presentation that you want to use with your students, that's easy to do. You just need to remember that once you open it, you need to go ahead and access Pear Deck. So you've got to have the add-on and you click there and you see Chris's toolbar. It says Pear Deck. If you don't see it there, you can click on the add-on tab and click on Pear Deck, and that's what gives you the little box to the right-hand side that will give you the option to start your lesson with the students, okay? So remember, if you're using something that has, the slides are not interactive until you add the interactivity, unless it's built to already be interactive by your curriculum department, but you can check that by looking for that Pear Deck bar on the bottom of the slides, okay?
Thank you, Gina. And that was an excellent seg over to how to begin a Pear Deck presentation. So let's say that I'm happy with my presentation here. I worked hard on it. I'm ready to give it to my students, okay? I have to open up the Pear Deck menu if I don't already have it open. All right, I can either select here or I can come to add-ons, come to Pear Deck, open the Pear Deck add-on, and that will open it up on the screen. All right, and I can select Start Lesson. All right, so when I select Start Lesson, I get 2 options. One is student paced, one is instructor paced. Student pacing is what is going to allow the students to progress through the slides at their own pace. So when we gave you, 5 to 7 minutes to look at some of the different interactive slide types, you were participating in a student-paced activity, meaning you could move at your own speed through the presentation, okay? If I wanted to do instructor-paced, that would be what we are in now in the Pear Deck presentation. If you still have the Pear Deck presentation open, you'll notice that you no longer have the ability to move back and forth through the slides. I, as the instructor, control what you see. All right, so if I decide, hey, we're going to put 5 minutes on this slide and then we're going to move forward, you're going to move forward in 5 minutes when I push it forward if I am in the instructor-paced activity. All right, for our purposes, because instructor pace might be what you're using commonly, but you can use student pace, I'm going to click on the instructor pace option. All right. Now, I've already logged into Pear Deck, but you may get a pop-up screen that asks you to log in. If you do, you're going to log in with your PGCPS credentials. If your students are going to log in, they're going to log in with their PGCPS credentials. That's what's going to allow them to get or to see your presentation. You'll also notice here that a teacher dashboard is opening. All right, there is a teacher dashboard that does some advanced features. We're not going to focus on the teacher dashboard today. We are going to talk about the teacher dashboard more in depth in our advanced session that will be held next month on February. So you can register for that in my PPS if you'd like to. All right, but then we're also going, so I'm going to close this where we'll talk about some of the more advanced features. But now I have my presentation up. How do my students join the session? All right, I'm going to open the Join PD option here. All right, this will display in your classroom. So if you're using Zoom, if you're using Google Hangouts to instruct your lesson, you're just going to share your screen like you normally would. All right, and the students will do exactly what you did. They'll either go to joinpd.com and enter the code on the screen, or maybe you'd like to share a link with them in the chat. You're going to click Give Students a Link. It will copy the link, and then I can paste that link directly into the chat, into my Google Classroom,